Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Week 3 preview. If you've been with us before, you know how it goes. We break down all the games over 4 different segments. A reminder to all of you watching us, of course, on YouTube Live, that they're also available as 4 separate podcasts wherever you get yours. You can also check out our Thursday Night Football preview podcast. We have both Giants and 49ers beat writers giving their views on the New York-San Francisco game at 1:20 a.m. on Friday morning, alongside Brian and Andrew Morgan. We start with the first slate of games from the early Sunday evening window. This preview is brought to you by RuPoint, demonstrating the value of global PR and communications. And you can see how RuPoint can help your business at rupoint.com. Well, we start this week with the first game in the early Sunday window, and that is Falcons at Lions. Colm, Falcons looking really good this season. We talked about Bijan Robinson and the difference that he's made. We've talked about the scheming of the man who would be king, Arthur Smith, with his Brewster's millions sitting waiting to be inherited once he finishes up in his coaching career. How do you see this one going against the Lions?
This one, Connor, in this week, I'm going with 80s songs as a theme. And for me, this is We Built This City. Because what you are looking at here is the lyric that came to mind was knee deep in the hoopla, sinking in your fight. And you have, obviously, in terms of biting kneecaps, you have Dan Campbell. And I think that both of these teams have shown over the last little while that they are very capable of, getting into a dogfight and occasionally coming through it. And to me, I think this is going to be a very interesting game because on one side you have obviously what can be an explosive offense, and on the other side, obviously, probably alongside the 49ers, the most efficient and exciting running offense in the entirety of the league. So to me, a kind of clash and contrast of styles in some ways. I think this will come down to if the Falcons can get pressure on Jared Goff, because Goff is absolutely phenomenal when he is clean in the pocket. But the issue with Goff is when you can get pressure on him. And the fact that the Seahawks were able to get pressure last week, when you're looking at, just the Seahawks pass rush isn't exactly terrifying, and yet they were able to get some pressure on him. And the other thing is the Seahawks were really good when they lined up in 12 and 13 personnel. And the Falcons have the ability to do that. Now, when they line up with 2 tight ends, they don't always pass to the tight end. Very often Bijan gets the ball, but what an option to have in Bijan Robinson. I think this could be one of the games of the weekend, but I'm going to go with the Falcons because I think the momentum is with them, and I'm nervous about it because I think Goff is a better QB than Ritter, but ultimately that is what I'm calling it. What about you, Brian?
It's a tasty one, and it's a tricky one to call, and I'm still torn. I've been torn all day when I was doing my notes for this one. I see you have happy paws on. I thought it was happier, and one of these teams is going to be happier. If the Falcons win, they'll be 3-0 for the first time since 2007. There'll be a happy lot going back down to Atlanta, Georgia after the game. I was looking at the Goff stuff because people are saying the monkey's off his back. He'd got 384 passes before he was intercepted, and people are saying the pressure will be off, man. There was a bit of focus on that last week, how much he's taking care of the ball. I don't really buy too much into it. I just look at the reality. Desmond Ritter's playing really well in 2 games. I mean, he threw for 225 yards last week, 2 touchdowns. He's complimented by a great run team. But I asked myself, if the one thing the Lions do at home, even if they lose, they tend to put up big numbers. They're always in the 30s. Like we saw last week, they lose in overtime, 36-31. I'll go with Lions. It's a tight one, but I think the Lions inevitably on offense will put up too much, and I don't know whether the Falcons can live with them. And it's the battle of the 2 running backs from the first round. Let's bear that in mind. Jameer Gibbs will obviously have a piece to say on this because Bijan's getting all the credit after the first 2 weeks. Gibbs hasn't been used or utilised in the same levels, which in which Bijan has been used, but Montgomery's carrying an injury. You might see more Gibbs on Sunday. I think Gibbs, the rookie, will come out the right side of it, and the Lions win and get back on the winning trade and go to 2-1.
Yeah, and I suppose that it will be intriguing. And the next game is another intriguing matchup because it is Bills at Commanders. And Connor, what are your thoughts on this one?
Sorry, I had to go to the blue tent there for a moment. A little bit of an injury timeout, a tech injury. I had a torn connection to the browser for some reason, but I'm back in the game now.
I want to hear Connor's pick on this one, Colin. I know Colin's gone Falcons, I've gone Lions. I want to hear you before we move on to the next one. Colin, where are you going on this tasty one in Detroit?
I'm going Falcons on this one. I think the Falcons are rolling at the moment. I think they benefit of probably a slightly handy schedule, but the Packers game kind of showed me an awful lot about what you expected to see and what we wanted to see from the Falcons this season. It showed that they have a lot of different dimensions to the running attack. Some of the free agent signings that they brought on the defensive side of the ball, which maybe would have been one of the bigger question marks heading into the season, I think are starting to pay off. They piled up an awful lot of offense against the Packers. I thought that was really impressive. They hit them from different angles, as we were saying. It's almost like they wore them down with body shots. It wasn't necessarily that they were relying on Ridder to do anything spectacular. And I still think, ironically, he's probably the Achilles heel of the team. You know, they'll go as far as he takes them. Yeah, I guess you could say that's true of all 32 teams in one way, shape, or form or another regarding their quarterback. But provided they can keep, and they got a lot out of the likes of Jonnu Smith and others who've kind of not necessarily been the ones that we expected to carry the offense, but showed up quite well in that game last week, which tells me Smith is really cooking up something interesting there. He's finding ways to take the load off Ridder's shoulders. He's finding ways to make it difficult for defensive coordinators to come up with a plan to stop them. They're not necessarily the most spectacular team unless Bijan gets the ball, but I can see them taking advantage of a Lions team that started the season really well with that win over the Chiefs, but maybe not going to have quite enough to slow that Falcons team down. So I'm going Falcons for this one. Following up with Bills Commanders now. Again, like as we were saying with the Bills Raiders game last time out, the Bills have made their money over the last couple of seasons by taking care of all the teams that you expect them to take care of. I think, Commanders coming off the back of that morale boosting comeback win last week, you'd expect them to be in good fettle, and they've probably shown up a little bit better than most people. Colin accepted. Colin, you were pretty high on them in the offseason, in fairness, and had called out this season as maybe being one where we'd see the Commanders surprise a lot of people. So far, that's exactly what they've done. But it's a big hill to get over the Bills. I think Josh Allen had that reset following week one where hero ball maybe got him into a little bit of trouble. I think he's back where you need him to be. I think they're back where you need them to be. I see them taking care of business against this Commanders team.
I mean, they're favorites and they'll be favorites for a reason. And what you saw Josh Allen do last week is exactly, we talked about it on Tuesday show, it's exactly the kind of response that he needed. And there was, far less of the hero ball. There was occasional moments of madness, but you need that. But this will be a great test, I think, for both of these teams, because for the Commanders, it's going up against a very good team. I think they have played two meh teams thus far. I'm calling this one Together in Electric Dreams, because I think for both of these sides, Josh Allen can be absolutely magnificent. And I think the combination between Howell and Bieniemy, Howell has a much better arm than many of the other kind of QBs who you might think to put him in the same tier as. I think he's a better arm than Kenny Pickett. I think he's a better arm than Mac Jones. And I think what separates him from a lot of the other rookie QBs, I know he played one game last year, he makes good decisions. He doesn't panic. And I think I'm going to go with the Bills, because I had Josh Allen as my MVP and I had the Bills as the division winners. But it is not going to be easy going into DC and trying to get a result against this Commanders team.
Brian, one thing that might give me pause for thought in going too deep in saying that the Bills will take care of business here is the performance of that Commanders defense. There were times when you saw Montez Sweat and Chase Young really looking back to their lethal best. At one stage, I think both of them hit Russell Wilson with a gang tackle against the Broncos last week. This is a battle of two very spicy defenses. The Bills, who we expected to be really good, the Commanders, who we thought might get there, and so far have really shown up on that side of the ball. It could get bloody in Maryland.
It could, but I'd also flip it and say the secondary of the Cardinals last week. Sorry, not the Cardinals. Commanders. Cardinals for later. That's for the witching hour. But no, like last week we saw the Commanders be exposed in the secondary by Russell Wilson a number of times. The Jerry Jeudy touchdown, and there was the high baller that went in for the touchdown as well. So I think there's frailties there. I think they be got at, and then obviously the one at the end, which was the fairness was it was a Hail Mary in a sense. But for me, I'm looking at two defense. I know Josh Allen, we know what we're going to get from Josh Allen on Sunday. We got Josh Allen last week, which we like to see, which was 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He goes out and plays the A game. But what's been lost in 2 games for me so far is how well the Bills defense has played. People say, okay, it was only the Raiders last week. They only gave up 10 points. But the previous game against the Jets, I know, again, the argument is it was only Zach Wilson. But for 17 points the first game, I give up on the special teams touchdown because that's not really related to the defense. And then 10 points last week. Defense is playing strong. They've had turnovers. This is a bit of a measuring stick game for Howard in terms of where he is in his progression after 2 weeks. He has played well, but this is a real test. But I'd be more sold on the Bills coming out and winning this game. I think this is one that the Bills, and like we said last week, these are the type of games, because they have come out with 11, 12 wins, these are the games at the nature of the season they go and beat these teams convincingly. I'm not sure it'll be convincingly on Sunday, but I think they'll have more than enough to get over the line against this Commanders team.
Colin, I'll tell you what is a measuring stick game at the weekend for the Broncos is that visit to Miami. It's going to be hot down there. There's nothing worse than sitting on that sideline on a sweaty September day, the visiting sideline that is, directly in the glare of the heat. The heat has definitely been on Sean Payton, given the way that the season started, and on Russell Wilson, particularly after giving up that big lead last weekend. Can the Broncos cause an upset in Miami for you?
They can, and it is, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility that a wily Sean Payton can orchestrate it. The problem is he doesn't have Dennis Allen and that Saints defense anymore. He has Vance Joseph, and that is probably one of the more baffling decisions that Sean Payton made in the offseason, or since he was appointed head coach, was to bring Vance Joseph in. I label this one Eric Carmen's Hungry Eyes, if people remember that one, because both of these teams have shown that the Broncos refused to rebuild, and they had any number of draft picks in the top 5 at times, top 10, but they kept chasing the QB, kept going after it rather than resetting, and they are paying the price for it now. And we all should remember the fact that this is a Miami team who were stripped of draft picks because the owner decided he wanted to pick up the phone to Thomas Brady. It's difficult to see the Broncos having the wherewithal to stop a Dolphins offense that can be explosive. And Vance Joseph is not Bill Belichick. Belichick did a really good job of slowing this Dolphins side. If it was in Denver, maybe I'd have a little more confidence. I don't. It's the Dolphins for me.
Brian, as Colin said, Belichick did a really good job last week, particularly taking away the deep threat of Tyreek Hill. Christian Gonzalez certainly helping out there, the rookie cornerback on the Patriots defense. One of the more interesting subplots to this game, of course, is Vic Fangio going up against Russell Wilson and the Broncos, and he'll definitely be looking to cook something up on that side of the ball to slow their march.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see what he has planned for the Broncos. It'll also be interesting to see how he's going to utilize Bradley Chubb in this game, obviously going up against his old team as well. 11 tackles so far, no sacks this season, but they are getting their fair share of sacks. They got quite a few on Herbert, in particular in the fourth quarter of the first game. And obviously there was a few on Mac Jones last week. I mean, the Dolphins are playing complementary football on both sides of the ball. I know people would suggest that they gave away a lot of points in the opening game, but Chargers and the offense that they have should be doing that on most teams in the league. And then you look at this offense, I mean, it's like a steam train. Like you look at Tua as the leading quarterback in in the league right now after 2 weeks. It's quite similar to where they were last year. And then you've got Tyreek Hill, 255, 3 touchdowns. 2 was over 715. And Colum's going to touch on there. Sean Payton, and you touched on it yourself there. The craftings of Sean Payton to go in and try to slow this offense down. And Belichick did it for large parts last week, but ultimately you've still got complementary players like Mostert now running the ball effectively. All week I was leaning Broncos. Genuinely, I saw a scenario. It reminded me of, as I said earlier on in the week, that game when they went to the Dallas. But as I look at the numbers and I look at I've watched the highlights of the Dolphins, I just don't see it. I've changed. I've completely gone the other way. I'm going to go with the home team, the favorite, and that is the Dolphins.
If I'd switched off the game last week after 3 quarters, I might be a little bit higher on the Broncos to maybe cause that upset this week. I just, like you, Brian, I'm struggling to see it as well. And like you, Colin, I just think the Dolphins have got way too much. I think it was nice to see Russell throwing those two or three deep balls and getting back to some of the sort of highlight reel plays that we see of old. But the problem, again, as we were saying when we were wrapping up those games last week and looking at some of the talking points, is that Russell gets addicted then to trying to hit the home run ball and doesn't do the simple stuff well, doesn't hit those crossers over the middle, doesn't keep the sticks moving, and can cause difficulty for them. I think ultimately that's what helped open the door to see that comeback happen last week. And I think Dolphins are going to make it even more difficult than they had it against the Commanders a week ago. Yeah, I'm going Miami with that one. And that indeed is where we leave it for the first segment of our week 3 preview, brought to you by RuPoint, demonstrating the value of global PR and comms. You can find out more at rupoint.com. Well, this is the second quarter of our week 3 previews on the Irish NFL show. Shout out to all of you joining us on YouTube live this Thursday. And a reminder again that our weekly previews are also available as 4 separate podcasts where we cover all of the different games, starting with the early Sunday window. And we have a very heavy AFC run of teams in the second half of that early Sunday window, led off by Texans at the Jags, Brian. Texans haven't looked too bad in the opening couple of weeks of the season. They got a very young roster, as we know. They still have a lot of rebuilding to do. They're trying to bed in CJ Stroud there. They've got some, pretty decent players on the other side of the ball, and they, albeit 0-2, and not a hopeless 0-2 to start the season. Jags, on the other hand, pretty much as we expected to start the season. Some explosive offense, but they also give up a lot of points. And if it's not happening for Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley et al., it can get ugly quite quickly for them. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, we didn't really get into too much around CJ Stroud's performance last weekend because we were quite excited by what we saw of Richardson for the Coles. But he threw 2 touchdowns in his home opener. He had quite a decent game for a rookie. And these divisional games are strange, in particular the AFC set. We always talk about divisional games and how teams beat up on each other. Like the Texans went in there last year in week 5 and won 13-6. The reverse game was 31-3 to the Jags. That was week 18. Of course, the Jags were hitting form. They were going to the playoffs. We saw it again last week, the Jags. The friendlies on offense, there's times where they look so explosive. We saw it week 1 in Indianapolis. And then the following week, I'm not necessarily saying they lay an egg because the Chiefs' defense with Chris Jones back was there last weekend. There was a big difference. I'm nervous about this one because the Jags really need to get this one. The Jags, we touched on the Bills beating up on bad teams. The Jags need to beat up on bad teams this year. For too many years, even it looked like they were progressing in the right direction, they always find ways to lose these games. And the Texans will look at this game going in. It's going to be a very hot day. There was something in the region of 90 people that were taken to the hospital at the Jags game last weekend because of the heat. It was 31 degrees Celsius. They're looking at a similar forecast Sunday. Doesn't necessarily mean the home team are always going to be the ones that can deal with the heat. I think the Jags will win, but I'm not comfortable about it. Genuinely, I think the Texans are trying for an upset. I think they played reasonably well in the opening 2 games. Haven't got on the right side of a victory. I think the Jags are sneaky, but I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as people may seem.
Colin, anyone who looked at the social media feed from last week's Texans-Colts games would have seen there was plenty of fight from the Texans off the field as well as on it. Do you think they can translate some of that to Jacksonville?
They can, and I label this one "Kids in America" because essentially this is the 2 young QBs. I think CJ Stroud has been really good. I think the fascinating thing has been that he hasn't been the issue, I feel, for the Texans. What you expected from him coming out of college, you have seen, and he's been able to deal with kind of the step up into the league. for the Jags, they've been really disappointing. And I talked on Tuesday's show about Chris Jones's win rate. 75% was just, I mean, that's terrifying. They have to sort that out. They're going up, though, against the Texans team who won't have that. And I know, Connor, you're a fan of the number 3 overall pick, and I think he's a very good player, but he is not Chris Jones, and Chris Jones with a point to prove. The Jags need to do better. They need to keep the ball moving, and they need to ensure that the trips to the red zone are more efficient. If the Jags were to lose this, I think at that point there will be real discussions around play calling and around Doug Peterson choosing to hand that off. But I think ultimately they have enough firepower to overcome a plucky Texans side.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think that the Texans have been a nice surprise. I think offensively they've clicked a lot better than perhaps we thought they would. I think Stroud, like both of you have been saying, I think has settled in pretty well. I don't think he's thrown a pick yet, has he? He's been really solid and probably operating at a higher level than a lot of people expected, given the spot that he found himself landing in. I think this is a game that the Jags just have to win. Like you're starting out the season dropping a game against a team that might end up with the number 1 or number 2 overall pick next year. It's much tougher assignments ahead. It in some ways looks like a get right game after the Chiefs last week. I don't think it's going to be easy for them. I think the weather conditions are definitely going to play a factor, Brian. I don't think that necessarily favors the home team. It's not like the Texans aren't used to heat in Houston themselves either, to be fair. I think the Jags will have it. I don't think they're necessarily going to run away with it, though, because that's not how they've looked so far this season. This is the kind of game where you need to get something going, and you'd like to see them click in a way that we haven't so far. I'd be pretty downbeat on the rest of the season if it shapes up with a loss for them, but I think the Jags will have enough to get it done. Colts at the Ravens, Brian. Lamar Jackson certainly looked like his own self last week. Real breakout for him after a slightly lackluster first game out. Do we see that form continuing, do you think?
Yeah, I'd be more convinced on this one as opposed to the last one in terms of, we're talking about 2 AFC South teams going on the road. I think the Colts are in a difficult spot here. Richardson is unlikely to play at the time recording. It looks like Gardner Minshew was going to play. The Ravens, in fairness, have a lot of injury concerns. The offensive line was banged up last weekend. Odell Beckham's unlikely to play. The Ravens obviously to find ways of an injuries, no matter whether it's offensively, defensively, but they've enough about them this season for me. They've come into the season. We spoke about it in the lead up to the season when we were doing our AFC North preview. Where there's no more excuses for this Ravens team because the last year and a half it's all about Lamar contracts, social media things going out. Is he getting on with the ownership? They all seem to be disgruntled around the contract. It's all gone away. They put Flowers in, like Zay Flowers, like put him up for his rookie MVP. And right now, it's hard to argue with that. He's so explosive. It's a different dynamic to what they've had. We spoke on Tuesday about the precision of Lamar going down the middle of the field. It's back to what we saw a couple of years ago. The Ravens, for me, just look like I wouldn't say it's a juggernaut situation just yet, but I think this is a difficult one for the Colts going in. And can they stay with him? I don't see. I think this is a Ravens strong victory on Sunday.
Yeah, same as it ever was for the Ravens column, as Brian has been saying. If they ever get healthy, watch out, but that just doesn't seem to be the way things work in Baltimore. But it's obviously that injury on the other side of the ball where the constant Gardner gets a chance to go against Baltimore. Can he lead this offense and get them going in some way, shape, or form, or is the loss of Richardson going to be too much for them to overcome, given how well he started the season for the Colts?
Beckham, Clowney, Hill, Humphrey, Linderbaum, Owe, Stanley, Williams. That is the Ravens injury report that was released 11 minutes ago. And do you know when you have that many players out, what do you need? You got to have faith. And that is what I believe the Ravens will have. I think the Colts need to have faith too. They are handling it right. They're not going to put Richardson back in, and they're going to run it with Minshew. I'm with Brian on this. I think the Ravens find a way. This offense has been great. Like talked about on Tuesday again. Like I suppose he's reduced the weight to go from 2.9 to 2.6 in terms of release time. It sounds so minuscule, but that is phenomenal to move that. It tells you there has been a significant change in the philosophy there, and Lamar is carrying it out. And I just think that the Ravens, despite the injuries, are kind of riding the crest of a wave right now, and I have them continuing with that.
Yeah, I'm going to roll beside that. I think you both covered it very well there for all the reasons outlined. I'm going Ravens in that one. Next game, in many ways, is arguably the most interesting of the weekend. Chargers at Vikings, two teams at 0-2. Brian's face lights up. It's like one of the most beautiful things every Thursday is to see the first mention of the Chargers. And Brian just come to life. Let me at him like Scrappy Doo. Let me at him. He's just waiting to have another cut of Brandon Staley. One of these teams, excluding the possibility of a tie, I suppose, Colin, drops to 0-3. Question is, who needs it more? Are Chargers going to Charger or are the Vikings going to Vike?
Yeah, that's I put this one down as Mike and the Mechanics. Do you remember All I Need Is a Miracle? That is this game. I think that there's so much pressure on the Chargers, and we don't know if Brandon Staley has lost the dressing room, but it's like when you see a head coach go to the podium and react in that way, and you see the way they have gone about things, it's difficult. There's a lot of like, we talk about the talent there, but like, did they really scare you? And their number one pick in the draft, we haven't really seen. I still thought they needed a speedster. Eckler is a very good player when he's on the field, but he's had injury issues. I really like the offense, right? And you look at what they're doing, but defensively, they've tried to fix and they've been better against the run, but that has just opened up holes in the secondary. I don't think things are going to work under Brandon Staley. I don't think it's the analytics piece. I think the job is just too big for him. There are very good coaches who use analytics and who are willing to take risks, but he wilted. And Arthur Smith, whether you like him or you don't, has the courage of his convictions, and he is going to stick to his guns. Brandon Staley, as soon as the criticism came, as soon as there were a couple of decisions that people really began to question, he wilted. And you don't know, is he going to go for it on fourth down? Is he not? His team don't know. They're in no man's land. I have the Vikings getting the win on this, even though you would say the Chargers have the better roster.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with that. Before we bring you in, Brian, I think one of the things that really disappointed in the Jacksonville game, and you can see how it gets to Staley when it's brought up. It was an easy one to kick to touch and just move on, but it really gets to him. Like, they just don't show up in the clutch. They did it again last week. They had a chance to win the game, ended up getting backed up and having to kick a field goal to tie it. They win the toss in overtime. 3 straight incompletions, a 3 and out. They punt the ball back and they end up losing that game, a game they should have won. Again, it keeps coming back at Staley. All this talent you've got, and they brought in Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. You take a cold, hard look at the offense and take a look at the numbers. They're top 5 in a lot of statistical categories. They move the ball as well as any offense in the league. They're top 5 in yards per passing attempt. They're top 5 in yards per play. They're having no problem getting up and down the field, but they're not getting enough stops on defense. They're coming up short in those key moments. Against that, I saw a lot of stuff that I liked from the Vikings last week. I thought they were very sloppy. Fumbles in particular, ball security was a big issue. You would hope that doesn't carry over from week to week, because they really coughed that one up. I thought they could have had that game against the Eagles, and we had a back and forth on WhatsApp about that. What I think is one of the stupidest rules in the NFL, where you fumble the ball and it goes out of the end zone and it's a touchback. I think it's just unnecessarily punitive. Cost Justin Jefferson as he was stretching for a touchdown. and that got the Eagles out of jail for my money. I think the Vikings take care of this one and drop the charges to 0-3.
I'm Bill Belichick. I am throwing the challenge flag on that. The offense has almost every advantage going. The touchback is one of the few things defenses have. If it's not there, well, we may as well just turn football into bowling. Have lads kind of throw it towards the end zone. Basically, bring in your throwing version of Johnny Sexton kicking for the end line. Get cross Johnny Sexton with Rory Delap is essentially what we're going to look at. No, it's there. The offense needs to take care of the ball. It's the one area where they need to do it. Stick with the rule.
Agree to disagree. Brian won't agree to disagree on Brandon Staley. The book very much out on Staley for Brian. I can only guess which way you're going, Brian, but tell us, what's your pick for Chargers Vikings?
You've bowled me over here, Colin, with this. I'm going to go with the Vikings to win this game because I would agree with you, Colin, from what we've seen in both teams so far. The Vikings were very lackluster in the first game against the Bucs, in particular Kirk Cousins. He fumbled the ball a number of times. He was careless in terms of giving picks away. And last week, again, I agree with you. I think that game, I think both games the Eagles played. I know we're going to get the Eagles there. I think both games in which they played, they've been there and could have been had. The Patriots could have had them, and the Vikings certainly should have had them last week. It wasn't for some careless play. If they get that right on Sunday and they secure the ball, I think they find a way to win this game. And I think I was more impressed with the Vikings despite the loss last week than I've been with the Chargers in those two games. So for me, the Vikings get the win in Brandon Staley. Just pressure just intensifies.
Brian, we go straight back to you for Patriots Jets, and this is one for all the mascots. Everybody wants to see Bill Belichick put Zach Wilson's head in a spin. Every non-Jets fan, I should clarify, wants to see him put Zach Wilson's head in a spin and have him seeing ghosts out there. Is there any way that the Jets can avoid that happening?
Yes, I think there is, and I think it will be on Sunday. Patriots are going for 15 in a row, but we didn't see a true reflection of the Jets' defense last weekend. I thought they were from what we saw in week one, and we've discussed how going into the season we thought it was Aaron Rodgers. This Jets defense can play with most teams, and I think they would have ghosts in Mac Jones' head. I haven't been convinced by Mac Jones in two games. Zach Wilson just needs to play a measured game for me in this one, and the Jets will find a way to win. Now, that is a very difficult task. I get it, and then the Patriots had their number. As I said, they're going for 50 in a row. The slide has to break at some stage, and I think it will be Sunday because the Patriots played reasonably well. They haven't shown anything for me that really puts them in this position to go out and go, oh my God, this is a clear-cut Patriots victory. I think the Jets navigate a victory. It won't be pretty. It'll be a very low-scoring game. It could be like a 4 or 5 field goal type of game. The Jets somehow sneak a victory, but nothing convincing. I'll be more so down to the defense withholding any pressure from the Patriots offense over the course of 4 quarters than Zach being the killer, Wilson.
Colin, the Jets can break the streak if Zach Wilson plays a measured game. Is that too much to ask for?
Yes, it is. He's terrible. The most difficult thing for me about this game was choosing which 80s song I felt was most applicable. Was it Michael Bolton's How Am I Supposed to Live Without You? Because that's the Patriots and life after Tom Brady, but also for the Jets, obviously, in life after Aaron Rodgers. Or was it I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight? Because that is the Jets when the ball is in Zach Wilson's arms. He can't play. He is not a dink and dunk QB. He should be, and Brian is right. Like if he was, that would be fine, but he can't do it. Like he's actually he is much better in structure, but in his head, he thinks he's better out of structure, and it's like that. He rose to the number 2 overall pick partly off his pro day, and he had that crazy kind of pass on the run, except he wasn't under any pressure whatsoever. And it's like he can't. Another way we were talking about Russell Wilson gets addicted to certain things. It's like Zach Wilson has never got beyond that pass, and he keeps looking for it. And that is exactly what Bill Belichick wants. Watch what they do. They'll push all the guys into the front. They'll force Wilson out of the pocket, and they'll know that he is going to make a mistake. I think this Patriots defense is for real. I think their offense is meh, but that's still better than it was last year. And I just don't trust the Jets offense to get it done, which is a real shame because there's lots of talent. But again, we talked about it Tuesday. You've got guys making comments on social media, deleting social media. Like if it hadn't been for Garrett Wilson making insane catches and insane plays over the past couple of weeks, it would have been flatline. Like the Jets offense wouldn't have existed.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about these games being difficult, even with Aaron Rodgers in harness for the Jets. Like this was always going to be a tricky start to the season. They're up in the first 3 weeks against three of the best defenses in the NFL. Not, of course, counting their own very well stocked unit. I think that Jets defense, to your point, Brian, is going to be licking its own chops. I think the Patriots offense looks better in pretty much every way, except in the most important way, which is that Mac Jones really doesn't look that great. We always knew the ceiling was relatively low there, but in year one, the floor was perhaps a lot higher than we would have expected for a rookie quarterback, which gave people what I think now has turned out as we enter year three to have been a little bit of false hope. I think the Jets will be really looking to get after them. I think they'll make it messy. I still think the Patriots have just enough on both sides of the ball to get over the line, though, because Wilson is just so poor. That Wilson to Wilson connection where he got that one throw through the tight window makes you think, oh, maybe if you can just stay clean, to your point, maybe if you get a measured game from him. I just don't think it's in him, and I certainly don't think the Patriots are going to let him have that in this particular game. I think the streak stays alive. All right, this is part 3 of our preview of the Week 3 games on the Irish NFL Show. For all of our podcast listeners, please check out all the other 3 previews where we get to all of Sunday's and Monday's games, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll just also add, if you like what you hear, can we give you a gentle encouragement to please review and rate the show? That really helps boost our visibility on the podcast platforms and helps others to find us. And wouldn't that be a great thing if we could welcome more to the Irish NFL Show family? Right, in the mid-evening slate of games, we have the Saints at Packers first up. Colm, the Saints, as Brian predicted before the start of the season, let's give him his flowers, really looking to roll. Derek Carr even feeling magnanimous enough to text Josh McDaniels, he said, congratulating him on their win against the Broncos in game 1 of the season. Underlining Derek Carr's leadership credentials. I know we're all big fans of Derek on the show. Did the Saints get to 3-0 here, or did the Packers, who have looked pretty tight with Jordan Love, despite their injuries on the offensive line, find a way to get it done in what is their home opener? Their first 2 games of the year, of course, have been on the road.
Well, can I just say, firstly, the Derek Carr piece was hilarious because he says about congratulating on beating the Broncos, just like we did last year and the year, and then he stops himself because he realizes how bad that's going to seem. But much like the Chiefs, it's only a rivalry when there are 2 teams involved. Anyway, moving on from that, this one, the lyrics that came to mind are a house that has a crowd, there's always something happening, and it's usually quite loud. I think you can apply that to both of these teams. Both fantastic. At home, fans always show up, but 2 completely contrasting stadiums. Lambeau in the middle, cold and known for being kind of inhospitable in terms of the weather. Compare that to New Orleans and the Dome there, and the way in which they go about their business. This is a really interesting game because the Saints defense, I think, has been really good, and that's ultimately what's done it for them. If Aaron Jones is fit, then I would go Packers because I just think that they'll have enough, but I don't know at the time of recording if he will be. And he was back, but he was limited, and Christian Watson wasn't back. And that's I suppose where I have a concern, because I do think that the Saints will be able to get pressure on the Packers. I am very torn on this game, but ultimately, let's go. It's Thursday. He's limited, but let's say Aaron Jones plays and the Packers, because they're at home, win. But I say that probably with the least conviction of any game this weekend.
Does love make the Lambeau leap for you, Brian, or is it the Saints to keep marching on?
It's the Saints to keep marching on for me, and I think it's a critical game in the season, albeit week 3, because Alvin Kamara returns from his suspension next week. So if the Saints were to get to 3-0 without having arguably their best running back there, I think that would be a huge piece in terms of just putting themselves in a prime position to go and win this division. They've conceded 15 points on defense and 17 respectively in 2 games. And when we did our season preview, we touched on how strong this defense would be. And Colin rightly called it out that, there's so many Asian players there that has to be this year. If it's not going to be this year, the window of opportunity for this defense is gone. But we've seen so far that they are playing the likes of the defensive schemes that Alan would like to see from them. Derek Carr hasn't set the world alight so far. But I think the kindness of this defense, we saw later on in the game last week, as good as Jordan Love has played in both games, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, that the former Saints coordinator, as it happens, who's now at DC over there in Atlanta, he kind of found a way to get into his head and kind of unravel slightly for him. And the Falcons came back and won. I could see them getting into his head over the course of 4 quarters. I think the Saints defense, more so than the offense, will find a way to get this victory. So I think they'll slow them down. I mean, the Saints will do enough to go to 3-0, but tight game. But I still think the Saints will come out the right side of it.
Yeah, like you, Brian, even at 2-0, I don't necessarily think the Saints have fully clicked offensively. We've been much more encouraged by what we've seen on the other side of the ball, where, as you both said, they've looked like they're firing pretty close to all cylinders. There's a couple of clips last week, a couple of moments where Derek Carr looked very frustrated and where he doesn't seem to quite have the connection with some of his receivers, a couple of miscommunications. Obviously, Olave looks amazing and they've got plenty of weapons. And when they get going, they're very dangerous. I'm kind of loath to pick against the Packers in their home opener. I've got plenty of scars from visits to Lambeau for the Bears over the years, but it's hard to know how good they are either. It was at times very encouraging for them last week, and Love, as I was saying the other day on our Tuesday show, very efficient for the amount of passing yards he had. He only had 151 passing yards, but that included 3 touchdowns. The Falcons had to do an awful lot to get their way back into that game, but you wouldn't be encouraged from a Green Bay point of view with the fact that they did ultimately cough up that 11-point lead to lose in the end, and the defense really got worn down by what the Falcons threw at them. I think there's a lot more coming their way of that nature from the Saints over the weekend. I think they'll look to take advantage of some of the flaws there. That Packers O-line obviously dinged up. When has that not been the case realistically for them over the last 2 seasons? Bakhtiari gone again. Jenkins left the game early last weekend as well against the Falcons. That is a big concern for them. I think on balance, I'm going Saints here. I'm not leaning heavily towards them, but I think New Orleans just about get it done. Titans at Browns, Colin. Horrific injury for Nick Chubb, as we've talked about, which takes him out of the game. They immediately went and brought in their old boy Kareem Hunt, who's going to be, you would hope, fairly easy to plug into that offense. They'll also look to lean a little bit more on Jerome Ford, who put up 106 yards and a touchdown, deputizing for Chubb last week. They're also up against one of the strongest run defenses in the league in Tennessee. So this is a very intriguing matchup. Which way do you see it bouncing?
I think this is a case of if I could turn back time for both of these franchises, because, I mean, my God, Watson, he was awful. And people need to realize, how much, rightly, Russell Wilson got last year for his play. But Deshaun Watson, it was every excuse rolled out for him, and he missed time and this and this. He was awful the other night. When Chubb went down, this is it, buddy. This is you. You have the largest guaranteed contract. And remember now, Patrick Mahomes, they restructured it and they tried to put out something around Patrick Mahomes the most guaranteed. No, he doesn't. He doesn't have the most guaranteed money. Deshaun Watson still has the most guaranteed money. 230 million. Patrick Mahomes is guaranteed 211. And they handed him the keys and he fell apart. Takes sacks, holds the ball too long, absolute nightmare. On the other side, the Titans O-line is muck. And if you're Myles Garrett looking at that, you are absolutely delighted. So this could be one of the worst. This could rival Colts Broncos from last year. I mean, this thing could finish 3-3. There could be more goals in some of the League Two games this weekend. I don't have faith in either of these teams. I really don't. I have probably more faith in Mike Vrabel than anyone else, and for that reason, I'm going to go with the Titans. But again, like the Browns should feast in in terms of being able to get to Tannehill. I just don't think they'll be able to score points.
Yeah, I'd agree. I have to say, before we bring you in, Brian, it's V for Vrabel, V for victory for me. I thought last week Titans-Chargers game, it was like exactly on brand for both of those teams. Titans just tough every week. They show up and they find ways to get it done, even in tight spots. I think they'll be greatly encouraged by what they saw from Deshaun Watson last week. I mean, you look at him at times and think, did you throw a ball? Did you do any running or any conditioning while you were off? He actually doesn't even look fit. It's extraordinary how ponderous he is, even when he's running. He just does not look like the Deshaun Watson that convinced the Browns to part with all that guaranteed money for such a flawed character. It's win or bust for them, and it looks like bust for me on Sunday. Brian, what do you reckon?
He did run in a touchdown in the opening game, guys. Just let's not forget that he is capable of having gone off in one. I know he's not Lamar Jackson anymore. He does have a turn of legs, so he may not be throwing the ball at the accuracy or the conviction which we saw back in the day in Houston, but he still can use his feet. He scored a number of touchdowns. And I would trust him more than Tannehill offensively. Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be a low-scoring game. I think defenses will, by and large, be on top. But I don't trust Tannehill on the road whatsoever. He threw three picks, in New Orleans 2 weeks ago. And I think it's what we were seeing last year. Common to him. He seems to be comfortable playing at home, and he struggles on the road. And I think this game on the road is going into Cleveland isn't easy. We saw it in week 1 with the Bengals. I think the Browns get back to winning ways. I think the Browns will be ruining that game on Monday because we spoke about the Steelers' offense and the fact how poor it was, and in particular the numbers in which they put together in the fourth quarter. And despite the frailties of how Deshaun Watson performed, I still think they'll look at it and go, bearing in mind how much they got out of the running backs that came in and stepped in on the night, that they didn't find a way to win that game. Be huge disappointed. I think they rebound on Sunday. I think Jim Schwartz will have a nice job ready for Tannehill. Derrick Henry hasn't gone over 100 yards in either game yet. Is he tailing off? You're talking about run defense. I think the Browns have a strong enough run defense to handle him. Browns to win a close one. Nothing we want to be watching all night long. Stick to the red zone. Browns come out on the right side of it.
Yeah, maybe a slightly more entertaining one in the first of the 9 o'clock games, Colin, where the Panthers travel to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. Panthers, of course, still looking for that first win. Bryce Young, of all the rookie quarterbacks, has probably had the most difficult start. You know, I don't want to be unfair to him. He's also in a tricky enough spot with relatively little around him in terms of playmakers. In fact, an awful lot more resting on his shoulders than you'd be comfortable with from a rookie point of view. And Seattle, not the easiest place to go to if you're in his position.
Phil Collins sang that you can't hurry love, but you can hurry Geno Smith if you're Aaron Donald. It's a game where it looks like Bryce Young won't play. That seems to be almost confirmed. He's an ankle injury and they don't want to risk it. And why would they ultimately? Because they're not going anywhere this year. It's about getting Bryce Young up to speed so that he's right for next year. They ended up having to give up so much over the past few years in their search for QB that they couldn't put proper weapons around him, and we're seeing that. So Andy Dalton will play. They don't have enough, and if the Seahawks show up in the way in which they did last week, I think it will be a much more comfortable game for them. But we saw week 1, I think the Seahawks were a little complacent. Hopefully that has shaken that out of them, and I expect them to get above 500 after this game on Sunday.
Brian, do you see a way for the Panthers to get it done with the Red Rocket at the helm?
Absolutely not. For those who don't know yet that are watching, we now have a segment on the AK Bets weekly betting podcast with you, Carl, from RTE. And I was on that this morning and I was asked, what is the banker of the weekend? And I said Seattle to cover the handicap, which is in the region of 5.5 to 6 points. Even with Andy Dalton playing or without Andy Dalton with Bryce Young, for me, this is the game for Seattle. What we thought we were going to see 2 weeks ago against the Rams, it'll be on Sunday. We saw it last week in the second half. They put up 30 points in the second half last weekend. I know the game went to overtime. It was obviously the late touchdown. That's some number to put up in the second half when you've underperformed in the first half. We were talking about the Giants in Arizona. Like that's a huge credit to the Seahawks team to put it up against a Lions team that a lot of people think are only going in one direction. That's the playoffs. And we thought this defense was back on track. Panthers have struggled in both games. For me, we saw it in the Falcons game. Bryce Young was off. It's a difficult task for Andy Dalton to go in there, having not played this year all day. Seattle, I'd be absolutely stunned. We've had a couple of moments over the past 3 or 4 years on the show where we've come into the Monday or Tuesday recap as we do it now, and we're flabbergasted by results. This would be one for me. I think Seattle will come out convincing winners on Sunday.
Yeah, that spread looks generous for me in the desert. Maybe doing people a favour for once, Brian. I think that's definitely the banker of the weekend. I'm going Seattle on that one as well. Would like to spend a bit more time talking about that one than talking about the next game, Bears at Chiefs. What a week it has been at Hallis Hall. And the wheels very much coming off the wagon in Chicago by the looks of it. Alan Williams, the defensive coordinator, resigning during the week. Reasons for that. He's saying personal reasons. The Bears saying quite tight-lipped, a very tersely worded statement from the Bears. Some outrageous stuff coming out on Twitter. We don't know the truth of that, so we won't even get into it. Justin Fields intentionally or unintentionally throwing the coaching staff under the bus and having to walk back some comments at his locker room. Matt Eberflus and the GM, Ryan Poles, to their credit, coming to Fields' defense and saying, look, everyone's on the one page here, but it certainly hasn't looked that way for the first 2 weeks of the season. Handled by the Packers in week 1, beaten again by the Bucs, making Baker Mayfield look like Tom Brady in week 2. And the Bears definitely the kind of team that you want your quarterback going up against if he needs to feel good about himself. Not that Patrick Mahomes needs a confidence boost, but going into this one, find it hard to see it being anything other than a mauling. There's always that sense in the back of your head that maybe this is a game where it puts it up to Chicago when they've got no pressure on their shoulders and they come in and they surprise people and maybe keep it tighter. Don't see any way for them to win though this weekend. Even if things have been going better over the first 2 weeks of the season, I don't think I'd have had this one penciled in as a W as a Bears fan, and I see no reason whatsoever over the past 7 days to change my mind. Bears drop to 0-3, Chiefs go rolling. Brian, what do you think?
Oh, it's one of those when the world is against you and the world is caving in, and every NFL analyst and media outlet and fan thinks this is a shoe in, and the handicap is 2 touchdowns and the Chiefs. It's only how many points the Chiefs are going to win by. The team comes out battling and they outperform everybody's expectations, and I could see that happen potentially for a half, and then the Chiefs find a way to just get the only thing in this game is complacency. That's the only way in which the Chiefs don't win this game. With all due respect to the Bears and what the Bears have, if the Chiefs come out and think this is one of those games. We've seen it in the NFL many a time. Teams take the foot off the gas, think it's a home run game before they even go out there. But I think that loss 2 weeks ago in the division is the reason why the Chiefs won't do that, because I still think they will be really disappointed in the nature of how they lost the game to the Lions. It's the second game of the season at home. When have we seen the Chiefs lose back-to-back home games? And when we even see them lose 2 games over the course of the season, it might have happened maybe once or twice. Certainly not in this period under Andy Reid very often. So sorry for your troubles, Connor. I think we all know, unfortunately, how this game is going to go. But I don't know whether it'll be the blowout, which everybody thinks. I think the Bears might outperform everybody's expectation, but not enough to win the game.
Colin, Justin Fields said in that press conference during the week that he's too robotic. He blames on the coaching, saying that he's going to go out this Sunday and say F it and just he's going to play. Is there any way that works against the Chiefs at Gaya Field?
I mean, they used to be the joke about F it, Megatron's down there somewhere. The Bears don't have that. Ultimately, that Cyndi Lauper song "Time After Time," that's the Bears. Time after time, it goes wrong. The wheels come off, and the Chiefs are the exact opposite. Time after time, it goes right. They find a way to win. Things are not right in Chicago at all, and this is the Chiefs for me.
When is it ever going to be Sweet Home Chicago? It's a long, long time since we've heard that one play. All right, we're previewing the Sunday and Monday night football games here on the Irish NFL Show. For podcast listeners, this is part 4 of 4. We chopped the week's games up into 4 quarters, and you can find the other 3 on your podcast platform of choice, where we preview the 2 early Sunday games and the first part of the Sunday evening games. We start this segment with the Cowboys at the Cardinals. Brian, the Cardinals have been perhaps a little bit better than advertised first 2 games of the season. Obviously, they laid down and died and allowed your Giants to storm back to a record-equaling comeback from their perspective. But the Cowboys, surely for the Cardinals, they're going to find themselves massively overmatched at home on Sunday.
Very unfair comment there regarding them laying down and dying. It took all of 3.5 quarters and a little bit towards the end for the Giants to finally get out of line. Like, we can't help you be impressed with the Cardinals. Just genuinely, like no one gave them a chance. I really thought they would be stuffed in both games. Two NFC East. I mean, what a unique schedule. You start the season with 3 NFC East games in a row. Yeah, this is a different beast though. Like this Cowboys team, I know we didn't pick them to win the Super Bowl this year, but the way that we start playing, it's a big blow of the news this evening that Trayvon Diggs has torn his ACL. It'd be interesting to see how they accommodate, because Stephen Gilmore was playing so well. There was a number of rookies that were up and down last year. It'd be interesting to see who plays alongside him over the other side, and if there's any way that they can expose that on Sunday, because the Cardinals' offense last weekend, for all the frailties teams had, they played quite well for 2.5 quarters. They played quite well. The previous week, whilst not putting up huge numbers, I'd like to see the Cardinals play well, because I think they are playing for this coach and for Gannon, who's had a lot of stick at the end of his tenure with the Eagles, and even during his time since he took over. I think this is a step too far. I think this is the week where we see the gap appear big time, and I think the Cowboys will feast on this Cardinals team on Sunday. Cowboys, annihilation job.
Colin, we've talked a lot about the Cowboys over the first 2 games and how they've come flying out of the traps. And yet most of what we've been talking about is what they've been doing defensively. And obviously losing Trayvon Diggs is a blow, but Micah Parsons has been a man apart this year. We've mentioned him time and time again. Not a huge amount of offensive highlights to call to mind, though. Brian saying they're going to blow the Cards out, and well, they might, but will it be that suffocating defense that holds the Cards down or will Dak actually get it going? Because it's not been an offensive explosion for all the points that they put up, funnily enough.
They haven't needed it. For me, before that awful Diggs news, I had gone actually with Journey's Don't Stop Believing, probably even more applicable at this point, because Jerry Jones always believes in winning the Super Bowl. And for the Cards, it's about believing that you might end up with Caleb Williams. If the Bears don't get him first. Fred is, has said it's next man up, and it will be, but I mean, Diggs is, he's really good. Like, it's funny, he had that year a couple of years ago with all the interceptions, and people were saying, oh yeah, but if he didn't have the interceptions, like in coverage, he'd get caught. Every cornerback gets caught at some point, right? Jalen Ramsey, Pat Surtain, Sauce. You end up, because of the nature of the offenses, because of the nature of the league and the way it's set up, they're going to get caught at some point. I think it is a big
wide receivers have every single advantage going. It's so frustrating when people are calling out cornerbacks. They're like, you talk about playing with one hand tied behind your back.
Exactly, which is why the touchback rule is so important. Glad you're on board there, Connor. I just think for the Cowboys, the Diggs piece could really come into play in other games. It's not going to come into play here. The worry, if you're the Cowboys, is that you buy the complacency. Right, that's ultimately what cost them against the Broncos a few years ago. They can't afford to be complacent. I'm just sad for Diggs, and sad for us. Right, injuries are so annoying, because what you want to see the best players. Like, how annoying is it? Whatever you think of Rodgers, that you don't get to see that play out with the Jets, that you don't get to see this play out now for the Cowboys defense, which was so much fun. Like, if you're a fan of football, you couldn't help. Even if you're a Giants fan, even if you're an Eagles fan, you couldn't help but think, my God, this Cowboys defense is serious business.
Yeah, boys will be boys for me, and I think they will be winning on Sunday. I have the Cowboys down in that one myself. I think we're full house on that one. Steelers at Raiders is an intriguing tie, Brian. Both teams blown out in one game and finding a way to win in the other game. Steelers in the most in unusual fashion, as we were saying on Sunday, with -4 yards in the final quarter of that game against the Browns, and yet finding a way to win defensively. That's not a sustainable tactic for the season, and they're going to need to show an awful lot more than they've shown offensively, whether to get over the Raiders or anyone else.
Yeah, I agree. They've obviously got tougher games to come. This, for me, is still a very difficult game. It's the first game in Vegas, the home opener for the Raiders, who, despite the loss last week, would have we touched on into certain games. You just know, unfortunately, you're never going to be able to measure up and match up against your opponent. That was one last weekend. I think for the Raiders, we have to see more offensively out of him, and we need to see more of Jimmy G. Like Colin, tongue in cheek last week, said it wasn't difficult for him to beat the Broncos because the Broncos were so poor offensively. They didn't do a lot offensively throughout the course of that game. There was just touchdowns early on and late on to Myers. We've got to see more from Jimmy Garoppolo in this team. We've got to see more from Josh Jacobs because this Steelers defense is going to put you under pressure. They need to get them on the back foot. And they need to put themselves in a position where they're winning the game in order to see if Kenny Pickett can beat them. Because Colin rightly called out on Tuesday, with the exception of one or two plays and the Pickett's touchdown, we didn't see very much. You alluded to the negative yards in the fourth quarter. I mean, it's been a disappointing start because there was a lot of high hopes for Pickett going into the season. A lot of people suggesting they can go to late deep run in the playoffs, win the division. We haven't seen it yet. They got over the line last weekend because the defense got them there. But I'm going to go Raiders. I'm going to go Raiders in this one. I think Josh McDaniels, it kind of suits him that there's no expectations on this team because when he went in there last year, me included, thought the Raiders would come back, go to the playoffs again. I think they're not going to go to the playoffs, but I think they can find ways to navigate victories. And I think on Sunday Night Football, with Devontae Adams there and other players, I think we'll see more from this offense at home and Raiders to win because right now I'm trust them a little bit more than I do the Steelers.
Brian trusts the Raiders to win, Colin, a little bit more than the Steelers. A lot of what we've seen from the Raiders, though, this season has been Garoppolo to Devontae Adams offensively. We haven't seen them run the ball well at all, and we haven't seen much evidence of a pass rush, Max Crosby being the honourable exception there. They're 1-1. It's only 2 games, and it's not time to panic. Do they have enough to get it done on Sunday at home?
I think this one is close to home in terms of references. I think both of these teams still haven't found what they're looking for because I don't think that Kenny Pickett is going to be the long-term answer. The Steelers' offense looks absolutely horrid, and his decision-making. Time to turn it around, but I think for the Raiders, I don't think Josh McDaniels or Jimmy Garoppolo are the long-term answers there either. Adams obviously had the, we'll see if he ends up playing. My understanding is there's a possibility that we may not see him take to the field. If that's the case, good night Vienna. But this is one of those weeks, right, where you look at the NFL and there are lots of tasty games, but you look at this and you look at Titans and Browns and you just think, oof, I wish we had the option that they have in the States with the YouTube TV where you can set up a number of different games, but you don't necessarily have to go down the red zone route. I'm going to go with the Steelers because Mike Tomlin is infinitely better as a head coach than Josh McDaniels. But with everything, what was Mike Tomlin thinking bringing Matt Canada back? There probably needs to be a federal investigation into that.
Sorry, just a quick one. He says good night in Vienna. Well, you'll always have a good night in Vegas. And I think if the Raiders are to navigate a victory on Sunday night, we might see it be party town along the strip. And no better place to have a good night than the strip in Vegas.
Yeah, well, look, there's a party on the strip every night. I think there'll be one on Sunday, but I think it'll be the Steelers fans celebrating. They'll travel in numbers, and that's probably the most attractive road trip going. Let's face it, for NFL fans, and they will enjoy that in more ways than one. I think defense travels well. Tomlin travels well. All is not well in that Raiders camp. The whole Chandler Jones situation continues to rumble, and you wonder what way that's going to be resolved. I see too many things not working in Vegas. I agree with everything that you guys have said about Pickett in that Steelers offense. I don't think it'll continue to be that bad. I hope it won't. As I said, I'm not picking with a massive amount of conviction. I just find it hard to back the Raiders the way they're going this season. I think Steelers have a little bit more about them. I think they know how to navigate these games, and I think they'll get the win. Monday night's a double header. Starts with Eagles at Bucks. Brian, we alluded to this very briefly earlier, that the Eagles at 2-0 arguably are the worst 2-0 team in football right now. Which is a huge thing to say. I get, given the talent that they've got on that roster, but they really have not looked like themselves over the first 2 weeks of the season. Yes, they've got the wins, but got the bounce of the ball in both of those games, and we haven't seen a click yet. Is the Bucks the game for them as they visit Tampa to get things together?
I don't necessarily know whether they'll get it together. I certainly think they'll win. I think the Bucks are flat by their 2-0 record at the moment. You touched on the Bears' performance last weekend. We spoke about the inability of the Vikings to put that game away and move the ball at times, and how lackluster they were. But the Eagles, I think a lot of it's down to the coordinators. We're still talking about the fact that they're transitioning into two coordinators. Defensively, last weekend they were got up by the Vikings. You could argue the Vikings offense can be strong in its day, but for me, Hurts has not played at the level we saw last year. Even his rushing yards and attempts of rushing yards is decreased. People would argue DeAndre Swift had a really strong game last weekend, and maybe the pressure can be taken off him and they can relieve the duty of him rushing. But he's so dynamic to that team when he's rushing. And teams have to kind of factor in that he's potentially like a second running back, a third running back. We haven't seen it. His yards has been quite slow. Offensively, they've been sloppy. They'll win this one because I think, as we said in some of the other games, the gap will appear throughout the course of the game. The Eagles, to go into Tampa and win, but I'm still waiting for that come to Jesus game this season that we saw very early on last season. But I don't think it'll be on Monday. I think the Bucks will find a way to keep it reasonably close for a period of time. Then the Eagles put away late on.
Colin, we hold the Eagles to high standards because of what we know that they have and what they're capable of, and they've been a good way short of that this season. The Bucks, on the other hand, to be fair to them, have outperformed so far. Baker has outperformed so far, but he's outperformed against a sputtering Vikings team and against a Bears team that looks like it's heading for the number one overall pick. What way does this one go for you?
To me, like in many respects, I'm not surprised that the Eagles have kind of stuttered because of the fact that Shane Steichen moved on, and I kept calling that out. And to me, it's even more than potentially Brian Dable going, Ken Dorsey coming in, because he just had he'd such a great relationship with Hurts. He had been involved in really building up Hurts, and he's a great feel for how to call the right plays at the right time. So it is an enormous change, and just because there always seems to be the feeling that somebody's been in the building and they've been the QB coach, and therefore it's automatically going to be the same, and we're seeing that isn't the case for the Bucks. Baker has been really good in the first 2 weeks, but he's been really good at all the things that we know Baker can be good at. We've yet to see Baker regress to the mean, and that's what I think, and ultimately for the Eagles, Meatloaf said, when you really, really, really need it the most, that's when rock and roll dreams come true. And that's going to be it with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2023.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Eagles will be fine this season. I think they'll be fine on Sunday night as well. I don't think they're going to need to be at their best. They haven't been so far. I don't think they're going to need to be at their best to get it done against the Bucks. And we await with bated breath whether Baker will continue to go or whether he'll regress to the mean on Sunday. This could be the beginning of the phase 2 of the Baker experience, which is the bit where you realize, oh yeah, he's still Baker after all. Final game is Rams-Bengals on Monday night. Bengals at 0-2, a big question mark over Joe Burrow's fitness and about how bad that calf injury, which kept him out of preseason and has kept him out of sorts over the first 2 weeks and saw him limping off the game, at the weekend. Big questions over whether he's going to be able to be anywhere near his best. Brian, can the Bengals get their first win on Sunday night against a Rams team that has been, again, performing ahead of expectations, has a lot of young players slotting in and doing good things on both sides of the ball?
It's amazing when you look at the schedule and you look at the Monday night game, you say, oh, that's a nice game. It's not when you're overly keen to stay up for. But this game has become very important very quickly. If the Bengals are to lose this game and go 0-3, and the Ravens pull off the victory against the Colts, which we're suggesting they will, they'll be 3 games behind the Ravens, and they've lost to the Ravens. Essentially, they're 4 games back. You can nearly write off the division. Now, bear in mind, we're talking about this team going to the Super Bowl and being the AFC, and potentially being the AFC number 1 seed. If they come out of this game and 0-3, storyline maybe more about how well the Rams are playing this season. But I think Burrow will find a way. This one is like, they have to get this game. And if they get this game, it'll be very much, Burrow's been struggling. We were 0-2 last year. We came hot at the right time. If you go 0-3, pressure only mounts on this team. For me, they win. They'll get it. I think they have enough to get it done. The Rams have been a great story so far. It's been, a bit of a surprise, and maybe this surprise will continue, especially if they were to go and win. But Bengals at home, Monday Night Football. Joe Burrow knows they have to win this game. So for me, McVay will be outcoached by Taylor, and the Bengals get over the line, but it won't be easy. It certainly won't be as easy as we thought when we looked at the schedule a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, Bengals, of course, they're my Super Bowl pick. I have Burrow as MVP for the season as well, but all of that, of course, is contingent on him being fit. There is no plan B in Cincinnati. Backup quarterback is not going to get it done. A lot of people would struggle to name him. That's a table quiz question. I can tell you who is the backup to Joe Burrow, and let's hope it doesn't come to that. With all due respect to the man this season, because you're just writing it off. Not only were they 0-2 last season, they also at the midway point of the season were only 4-4. They were 5-4. Then they reeled off 8 wins in a row. I think it was 10 overall if you include the playoff game. So we know this team can throw punches in bunches. We know they can put together a streak, and everybody's been expecting it to click eventually. But you don't want to fall to 0-3, especially as you say, Brian, having lost a key divisional game the first week out, and with the Ravens looking like they're rolling, and all 3 of us picking us to win and to go 3-0. That's a big hole to climb out of. We talked about the importance of the number 1 seed. Never mind winning the division. You don't want to have a tricky road playoff game, if that's what the Bengals' destiny is, as more or less everybody expects it to be. You've got to find a way to dig this one out. I think it's a very close call. It's a lot closer than you'd like it to be if you're a Bengals fan. I'm ultimately edging Cincinnati, but Rams have been a lot better than I expected to be, Colm. How do you see it going?
This is karma chameleon, because none of this makes any sense whatsoever, and the Culture Club never did. And Motty's famous, the Crazy Gang have beaten the Culture Club. Well, maybe I'm going that way in this, because I'm going to say that the Rams are going to do it. I don't think Burrow's calf is right in any way, shape, or form, and I had the Bengals going to the Super Bowl as well, but it's not right. And the concern for me is that they're going to put him out there because they're going to look at this and they're going to say, like, we're capable of beating the Rams. We get it back to 2-1. We'll see where Joe is then. But he doesn't look in any way, shape, or form comfortable. And that's just an enormous concern. And I think the Rams have a very talented DC. They have a very talented head coach. And if Burrow was at, if the injury wasn't there, this would be Bengals all day. But I just don't think he's right. And he went into training today and he was wearing a full sleeve, and he's not even walking right. I mean, to me, that the fact that he could end up taking the field on Monday night, I don't like it. I'm going Rams on this.
All right, and that is a wrap for our Week 3 preview. You can check out all 4 segments, of course, wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for everybody who tuned in this evening to watch us on YouTube Live, where we are every Thursday night previewing the games, and we look forward to picking up all the talking points next week as the weekend progresses.